So we're starting a series on Proverbs, and because we're doing a series on Proverbs, which is a book written from the perspective of parents talking to children, we thought it would be good to remember some of the Proverbs that our parents said to us when we were young, and thinking about times that they were really applicable in life and times that they weren't applicable, because that's how Proverbs are sometimes. So I'll start. My mum taught us when we were young that 2 wrongs don't make a right. And I didn't really know what she meant. So firstly, can somebody explain what that means?
I'll have a stab at it. If someone does something wrong to you, and then you do something wrong back to them, then that's not going to make the situation right. It's about vengeance, I think.
Okay.
It's not directional.
She would always say this to me when I punched my brother. So I guess that makes sense, because usually my brother would punch me first and I would punch him back. And then Mum would say 2 wrongs don't make a right.
And how did you understand that proverb?
Well, I think I thought that it meant directionally, two lefts make a U-turn. That's why I was really confused, so I just don't know. So what does a right make? I don't know.
Has it ever not been a good thing?
Well, I think the issue with it is that sometimes, if you say 2 wrongs don't make a right, it means that you quench justice, because sometimes when wrong is done to you, you do need to seek justice.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
But that might not mean doing the wrong thing in return to someone else's wrong. It might be doing the right thing in response.
Leon, what advice have you been given?
So, I think my mum's advice that comes to mind the quickest is, there's always a little phrase she would say, which was, the Manly Daily might turn up. And that was meant to, modify your behaviour. So if you're going out...
Not the actual paper, but the people from the Manly Daily.
Right, you could go out somewhere and the Manly Daily might turn up, right? So you should, dress well, have clean underwear on, I don't know. Or if you're behaving in a certain way, well, the Manly Daily might turn up, and then...
That's great.
So same questions then. When has that expression been applicable?
I think the idea of it is that the world watches on, people see what you do and who you are. So I think there's good things about that. But then I think that there's a problem where it plays to a really broad audience, where if you're worried about what other people see and thinking all the time, that might be a really unhealthy way to live your life.
Kieran?
My dad would always say, just play the game. Just play the game. So not in relation to sport, but at school, or if I was ever getting in trouble in any part of life, he's like, mate, it's simple. Just play the game. It's going to be better for you and everyone else if you just play the game. Just do what you're supposed to do. And that, I think the only time it doesn't apply is sometimes where you just can't play the game, where you got to stand up and argue and disobey in a good way, I suppose. And Dad also had a saying that he regularly said to me was, rules are made to be broken. And I think that's sort of play the game, but rules are made to be broken. And so I suppose it depends on what the rules are, and that's the way I've taken it.
Which is pretty cool, because as Daniel was saying before, that's kind of what happens throughout Proverbs, isn't it?
Yeah.
You get the same proverb applied in 2 different ways and stuff. So sometimes it's right to play, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you gather, sometimes you scatter.
Yeah, it's true.
The other one I remember my dad saying a lot was, he would say, if at first you don't succeed, try again. And I think that's probably good. I tell that to my kids today, but as a kid, I didn't like trying again, so I was a quitter. And I didn't like his advice at all, and I didn't want to apply it to my life. I just wanted to pout.
Who's next?
My dad is a wonderful, faithful Christian man, and growing up, he would tell my brother and I so many proverbs, and we'd be like, oh, Dad, again. But his favourite one was, you need to sharpen your axe. And I think he took it from Ecclesiastes 10. And he would elaborate on it, saying that you need to have good tools to be able to get the job done. And so often it would be in stressful times, or when I was really worked, or coming up to the HSC, and he'd say, go to sleep, have a good rest, you need to sharpen your axe to use your tools the next day. Which is fantastic. He still says it to me all the time. So that's helpful for remembering that you do need to rest and refresh, and preparation is good. But I also have used that to mean that I can just rest a little bit longer and procrastinate because I'm really sharpening my axe. By the time I finally get around to doing whatever I need to do, my axe is going to be sharp. And then also, don't let the sun set on your anger. And so growing up, my brother and I would get into big arguments, and Mum and Dad would make us work it out before we went to bed, and then they'd force us to hug each other to prove that we had reconciled, and you'd be there like, oh. But I think that is really helpful. It is good to face your issues and work them out and try to seek that reconciliation. So, yeah.
That's good. My dad's advice was similarly based a lot around tools and that kind of stuff. So like right tool for the right job kind of thing. But then his big one was always that you measure twice, cut once.
Oh, my dad loves that one too.
And I think that all
you're
the
training
time.
dads.
Yeah. And I think that's good wisdom in lots of ways. You know, like, not rushing in and thinking and then kind of executing. But then it's like the sharpening your axe thing. You can kind of just keep measuring forever, and at some point you've got to use the axe, or you've actually got to make a cut. So let's do this. So is there one piece of advice that you'd pass on to your kids, or that you'd hope to be remembered for? A piece of wisdom?
I think the thing I repeat often to my kids when they're really struggling or something sort of tragic has happened is just to remind them that with Jesus, this isn't all there is. That there's actually more to the story. And so I find myself saying that little phrase a lot to my kids, that there's actually more to the story than just this, because we believe in a great big God who loves us and has more for us than whatever we're going through. So I find myself saying that a lot.
A piece of wisdom that I think about a lot is something that Jesus says. I think when he's tapping into the idea of Ecclesiastes, but he says, isn't life more than food and the body more than clothes? I think about that one a lot. I just say that expression over in my mind constantly.
I think my one's probably the flip on the Manly Daily one, which is actually you play to an audience of one. You know, like in the end you're going to stand before God, and what would it mean to gain the whole world and but for your soul? You're living with that perspective in mind.
I regularly tell my kids around this idea of humility. I wouldn't say it's a saying, but my advice to them is regularly just be humble. Like, recognise that anything you have is a gift. You've actually earned none of it. It's all from God's gracious hand. And so, yeah, be humble. Don't think you're better because of what you have.
I guess something that's been helpful for me, and I'd like to pass on, someone once told me that your friends are your future, and just remembering the people that you surround yourself with can have a huge impact on how you live and how you think, so to choose your friends wisely.